The asteroid field of Vega 7 provided perfect cover for the growing resistance fleet. Hollowed-out asteroids served as hidden bases, while the natural interference from cosmic radiation made detection by Imperial forces nearly impossible. In the 3 weeks since Amelia's escape from Neo-Constantinople, the resistance had grown from 40 ships to over 100, with more arriving daily. The command center Admiral Reyes had established in the largest asteroid was a testament to improvisation and determination. Holographic displays showed the positions of loyal forces across the galaxy, while intelligence officers worked around the clock to track Imperial movements and identify potential targets. The convergence timeline has been accelerated, Dr. Sarah Chun reported during the daily briefing. She was a biotechnology specialist who had been analyzing the technical data from Lieutenant Okafor's intelligence coup. Based on the construction schedules we've intercepted, they're planning to activate the system in 6 weeks, not 4 months. The assembled officers, nearly 50 senior commanders from across the Imperial Navy, received this news with grim determination. They had known time was short, but the accelerated timeline meant their window for action was closing rapidly. What's driving the acceleration? Admiral Reyes asked. Intelligence suggests they're concerned about growing resistance activity, Commander Kim replied. She had been coordinating intelligence-gathering operations across multiple sectors. They want to complete the convergence before organized opposition can form. Amelia studied the tactical displays showing Imperial fleet movements. The pattern was becoming clear. Loyal forces were being systematically isolated in remote sectors while Cortry-controlled units moved into position around major population centers. They're preparing for simultaneous strikes across dozens of worlds, she observed. The convergence isn't just about the primary device on Cortry Prime, it's about coordinated attacks on every major population center in the Empire. Lieutenant Okafor, who had been working with the technical analysis team, looked up from her workstation. Admiral Vasquez is correct. The primary device generates a quantum field that can be amplified by smaller installations. They've been secretly constructing these amplifiers on 47 worlds across the Empire. She activated a galactic map showing the locations of the amplifier sites. The distribution was strategically perfect. Every major trade route, every important star system, every significant population center was within range of at least one installation. Estimated casualties? Admiral Reyes asked quietly. Dr. Chen consulted her data pad with visible reluctance. Based on the population classifications we've seen, approximately 14 billion people across the affected worlds. The biotechnology they're using is designed to target specific genetic markers while leaving infrastructure intact. The silence that followed was profound. Even experienced military officers who had seen the worst of frontier warfare struggled to comprehend the scope of the planned atrocity. Then we stop them, Admiral Reyes said simply. Whatever it takes, whatever the cost, we stop them. Admiral, Captain Torres from the heavy cruiser Retribution spoke up. We have less than 200 ships against the entire Imperial fleet. Even if we could reach Cortry Prime, we don't have the firepower to penetrate their defenses. Actually, we might not need to, Amelia said, studying the technical specifications of the convergence device. Dr. Chen, what happens if the quantum field generated by the primary device becomes unstable? Theoretically, it would create a cascade failure that could disable the entire network, Chen replied. But destabilizing something of this magnitude would require precise timing and access to the device's control systems. Or someone on the inside, Amelia added. She had been thinking about her sister Elena, still imprisoned on Cortry Prime. As a xenoarchaeologist, Elena would have intimate knowledge of the ancient technology the Cortry were using. You're thinking of a rescue mission, Admiral Reyes observed. I'm thinking of a sabotage mission that happens to include a rescue, Amelia corrected. If we can infiltrate the research facility, we might be able to turn their own technology against them. Lieutenant Okafor stepped forward. Admiral, I've been analyzing the security protocols around Cortry Prime. The system is heavily defended, but there are regular supply convoys that service the research installations. If we could intercept one of those convoys, we could get a small team onto the planet, Captain Torres finished. It's risky, but it might be our only option. Admiral Reyes moved to the central command display and began calling up fleet positions. We'll need to create a diversion to draw their attention away from Quartry Prime. A major engagement in another sector that forces them to commit significant resources. The Centauri shipyards, Commander Kim suggested. Intelligence indicates they're using the facilities to construct additional convergence installations. If we attack there, they'll have to respond with everything they have. The plan began to take shape. While the main resistance fleet engaged Imperial forces at Centauri, a small team would infiltrate Quartry Prime and attempt to sabotage the convergence device. It was desperate, but it might be their only chance to prevent the systematic extermination of billions of people. I'll lead the infiltration team. Amelia volunteered. Amelia, you're too valuable to risk on a mission like this, Admiral Reyes protested. I'm the only one here who has a personal connection to someone inside the facility, Amelia replied. Elena will trust me, and we need her cooperation to make this work. The debate continued for hours, but eventually the plan was approved. They had 42 days to prepare for the most important military operation in human history. Failure would mean not just the defeat of the resistance, but the end of human civilization as they knew it. As the briefing concluded and officers dispersed to their commands, Amelia found herself alone with Admiral Reyes. Helena, I need to ask you something, she said quietly. If this goes wrong, if we fail to stop the convergence, what's your contingency plan? Reyes was quiet for a long moment. There is no contingency plan, Amelia. We either succeed, or humanity becomes something unrecognizable. There's no middle ground. The weight of responsibility settled on Amelia's shoulders like a physical burden. In 6 weeks, she would either be remembered as one of the heroes who saved civilization, or as one of the last free humans to die fighting for their species' soul. The stolen Imperial transport Meridian's Grace dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Quartry system with all the routine efficiency of a legitimate supply run. Amelia, wearing the uniform of a logistics coordinator, watched the system's 3 industrial worlds grow larger on the view screen. Somewhere on the primary world, her sister was being held prisoner in facilities that might hold the key to stopping the convergence. Her infiltration team consisted of 6 specialists, each chosen for their unique skills. Lieutenant Okafor served as their communications and computer expert, while Sergeant Major Torres provided tactical expertise and weapons training. The team was rounded out by Dr. Chen for technical analysis, Commander Park for demolitions, and Lieutenant Singh for piloting and extraction. Approach control to transport Meridian's Grace, came the voice over the communications channel. State your business and prepare for security screening. This is Captain Martinez, Amelia replied, using her cover identity. Delivering medical supplies and research equipment to Installation Omega-7. Authorization codes transmitted. The authorization codes Lieutenant Okafor had extracted from Imperial databases during their escape were still valid, but they all knew their window of opportunity was limited. Eventually, someone would notice the missing transport and cancelled supply orders. Authorization confirmed, Meridian's Grace. You are cleared for landing at Platform 7. Be advised that all personnel must undergo security screening before accessing the installation. Quartry Prime was even more forbidding than Amelia had expected. The planet's surface was a harsh landscape of mining operations and industrial complexes, with the ancient underground cities hidden beneath layers of machinery and artificial structures. The sky was a perpetual gray-brown from atmospheric pollution, and the few visible settlements looked more like prisons than homes. Installation Omega-7 was built into the side of a massive mountain, its entrance guarded by weapon emplacements and energy barriers. As their transport settled onto the landing platform, Amelia could see the scope of the operation, hundreds of personnel moving between various facilities, with heavy equipment being transported through reinforced corridors that disappeared deep into the planet's crust. Remember, she told her team as they prepared to disembark. We're maintenance contractors here to service the life support systems. Keep your heads down, follow the protocols, and don't give anyone a reason to look at us twice. The security screening was thorough but routine. Their forged identities and manufactured work orders passed inspection, and within an hour they were being escorted into the installation by a bored security guard who clearly considered supply personnel beneath his notice. The interior of the facility was a stark contrast to the industrial exterior. Clean corridors lined with advanced technology stretched in multiple directions, with transport pods moving personnel and equipment through what was clearly a vast underground complex. The architecture was subtly wrong, too angular, too organic, clearly based on non-human design principles. "Maintenance access to level 7, their escort announced, gesturing toward a service elevator. "Your supervisor will meet you there. Try not to get lost, this place is bigger than it looks." As the elevator descended, Dr. Chen whispered quietly to the team. "The energy readings I'm detecting are off the charts. Whatever they're building down here, it's consuming enormous amounts of power." Level 7 was a maze of corridors and technical spaces, filled with the humming of massive machinery and the constant flow of personnel. Their cover assignment was to inspect and repair atmospheric recycling systems, which provided legitimate access to maintenance areas throughout the complex. "Split up," Amelia ordered quietly. "Chen and Park, map the power distribution systems. Singh and Torres, locate the primary computer access points. Okafor and I will try to find the research sections." Finding Elena proved easier than expected. The facility's directory system, accessible through any maintenance terminal, listed all personnel by location and clearance level. Dr. Elena Vasquez was assigned to Research Lab 12 Alpha, deep in the facility's most secure section. "Heavy security," Lieutenant Okafor observed as they approached the research levels. "Biometric scanners, armed guards, and what looks like automated defense systems." The research section was clearly the heart of the installation. Through reinforced windows, they could see laboratories filled with technology that combined imperial engineering with the strange organic aesthetic of the ancient hegemony. Scientists and technicians worked around the clock, supervised by courtly personnel whose pale, angular features marked them as members of the underground civilization. "There," Amelia whispered, pointing to a laboratory where a familiar figure was working at a complex control interface. Elena looked thinner than Amelia remembered, and there were signs of stress and exhaustion on her face, but she appeared to be unharmed. "2 guards at the entrance," Okafor noted. "Plus automated systems that probably include lethal countermeasures." As they watched, Elena looked up from her work and appeared to be arguing with one of the courtly supervisors. Even from a distance, it was clear that she was being held against her will and forced to cooperate through coercion rather than genuine loyalty. "Can we create a distraction?" Amelia asked. Okafor checked her portable scanner. "The facility's power grid is highly centralized. If Commander Park can access the main distribution center, she might be able to cause a localized blackout that would disable the security systems." They spent the next 2 hours mapping the facility's layout and identifying key systems. The scope of the Convergence project became clear as they explored. The entire installation was dedicated to perfecting the biotechnology that would be used in the mass extermination. Laboratories were developing targeting algorithms, manufacturing centers were producing the quantum amplifiers, and testing facilities were validating the effectiveness of the system against various population groups. "This is monstrous," Dr. Chen whispered as they observed one of the testing labs. "They're using live subjects to calibrate the targeting parameters." The test subjects appeared to be political prisoners and captured resistance fighters. Amelia recognized several faces from wanted bulletins, people who had opposed the new regime and disappeared into the imperial security apparatus. "We need to move fast," she decided. "Every minute we delay, more people die." As evening shift change approached, the team put their plan into action. Commander Park created a carefully timed power disruption that plunged the research section into darkness, while Amelia and Okafor used the confusion to breach the security cordon around Elena's laboratory. "Elena!" Amelia called softly as she entered the lab. Her sister turned from the control interface where she had been working, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Amelia? What are you doing here?" "Rescuing you," Amelia replied, moving quickly to disable the security monitoring equipment. We don't have much time. The power will be restored soon. Elena's expression shifted from surprise to desperate hope. Amelia, you have to stop them. The convergence device, it's even worse than you know. They're not just planning to eliminate selected populations. They're planning to rewrite human genetics entirely. She gestured toward the control interface, which displayed complex biological models. The quantum field doesn't just target specific genetic markers, it can modify DNA in real time. They're planning to transform every human in the galaxy into something that matches their ideological template. The implications were staggering. The Courtry weren't planning genocide. They were planning to remake the human species in their own image, eliminating not just individuals but the entire concept of human diversity. Can it be stopped? Amelia asked. Elena nodded grimly. The system has a critical vulnerability. The quantum field requires precise harmonic resonance across all amplifier sites. If we can introduce a phase variance at the primary generator, it will create a cascade failure that destroys the entire network. How? The control systems are based on ancient hegemony technology, but they've been modified with imperial components. There's a feedback loop that can be exploited if someone with the right knowledge can access the primary control interface. Emergency lighting flickered on throughout the facility as backup power systems activated. They had minutes before security forces would arrive to investigate the power failure. Elena, can you sabotage the system from here? No, it requires access to the primary device itself. But I know where it is and how to reach it. As they prepared to leave the laboratory, Elena grabbed a data storage device from her workstation. Everything I've learned about their plans and technology. If something happens to me, this might be enough for someone else to stop them. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridors as security teams began their search. Amelia's infiltration mission had become a race against time, with the fate of human civilization hanging in the balance. The primary convergence device was located 3 kilometers beneath Courtry Prime's surface, in a vast chamber that had been carved from living rock by the ancient hegemony of shadows. As Elena led the infiltration team through maintenance tunnels and forgotten passages, the architecture around them became increasingly alien, organic curves and mathematical spirals that seemed to follow non-human aesthetic principles. The hegemony built this chamber as a focusing array for their biotechnology. Elena explained as they descended through service shafts that predated the current installation by millennia. The current occupants have modified it extensively, but the underlying structure is unchanged. The team had been traveling for 6 hours through the underground complex, avoiding security patrols and automated surveillance systems. Above them, the facility was on high alert following their escape from the research laboratory, but the ancient tunnel network provided routes that weren't shown on any current maps. Power signatures are increasing, Dr. Chen reported, consulting her scanner. Whatever's down here, it's drawing enormous amounts of energy. They emerged from the maintenance tunnels onto an observation platform overlooking the primary chamber, and Amelia felt her breath catch. The convergence device was massive, a crystalline structure the size of a city block, suspended in the center of a spherical chamber by energy fields that crackled with barely contained power. Around the device, hundreds of technicians worked at control stations while Courtry supervisors monitored every aspect of the operation. The activation sequence has already begun, Elena observed grimly, pointing to status displays that showed the device's energy output steadily increasing. We have maybe 2 hours before they reach critical resonance. The chamber itself was a testament to the Courtry's technological capabilities. Ancient hegemony architecture had been seamlessly integrated with imperial technology and their own innovations, creating a hybrid system that combined the best aspects of 3 different civilizations. But the purpose was purely destructive. The chamber was designed to generate a quantum field that could reach across the galaxy and rewrite the genetic code of every human being within its range. The control center is on the far side of the chamber, Elena pointed out. That's where I need to go to introduce the phase variance. Lieutenant Okafor had been studying the chamber's layout through her tactical scanner. Heavy security, multiple layers of barriers, and automated defense systems. Getting there will require a significant distraction. Sergeant Major Torres nodded toward weapon emplacements that were positioned throughout the chamber. Those are military-grade particle cannons. They're not taking any chances with security. As they observed the operation, Amelia noticed something troubling. The technicians working on the device weren't all courtly. Many appeared to be Imperial personnel who had been converted to the conspiracy through unknown means. Their movements were synchronized in a way that suggested external control rather than free will. Elena, what did they do to those people? Her sister's expression darkened. Neuroconditioning using technology derived from hegemony research. They can rewrite personality and loyalty just as easily as they plan to rewrite genetics. Anyone who works here for more than a few weeks becomes completely loyal to the courtry agenda. The scope of the conspiracy continued to expand. Not only were the courtry planning to remake humanity genetically, they had developed the capability to control minds and eliminate individual will. If they succeeded with the convergence, the resulting civilization would be a hive mind dedicated to their ancient ideology. We need to move, Amelia decided. Every minute we delay, they get closer to activation. The plan was necessarily simple. Commander Park would create explosive diversions throughout the chamber to draw security forces away from the control center. Dr. Chun and Lieutenant Singh would attempt to disable the automated defense systems from maintenance access points. Meanwhile, Amelia and Elena would fight their way to the control center and attempt to sabotage the device. What about extraction? Lieutenant Okafor asked. Amelia was quiet for a moment. The truth was that extraction was unlikely. Once they began their attack, the entire facility would be sealed and every security force on the planet would converge on their position. We complete the mission first, she said finally. Everything else is secondary. The team split up and began moving toward their assigned positions. As Amelia and Elena made their way toward the chamber floor, Amelia reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. 6 months ago, she had been a loyal naval officer serving on the frontier. Now she was preparing to sacrifice her life to prevent the extinction of human free will. Amelia, Elena said quietly as they prepared to enter the chamber. If something happens to me, remember that the phase variance has to be introduced at exactly the right frequency. The data device I gave you contains the calculations. Nothing's going to happen to you, Amelia replied, but she could see the fear in her sister's eyes. The first explosion echoed through the chamber as Commander Park's diversions began. Security forces immediately responded, moving away from their positions to investigate the disturbances. But the automated systems remained active, and the weapon emplacements tracked any movement in the chamber with mechanical precision. No, Amelia whispered. They sprinted from cover toward the control center, dodging energy blasts from the automated defenses. Around them, chaos erupted as Park's explosions triggered secondary failures throughout the facility's systems. Emergency klaxons wailed, and evacuation protocols activated as non-essential personnel were ordered to safety areas. A particle beam seared the air next to Amelia's head as they dove behind a control console. The automated defenses were too accurate to evade for long, and the control center was still 50 meters away. Cover me, Elena called, pulling out a device she had taken from the research laboratory. She activated what appeared to be some kind of electromagnetic pulse generator, and several of the nearby weapon emplacements went dark. But the effect was temporary, and more systems were coming online to replace those that had been disabled. They made another dash toward the control center, with Lieutenant Singh providing covering fire from his position in the maintenance levels. The defensive systems were becoming more coordinated as the facility's security AI adapted to their tactics. Elena, go! Amelia shouted as they reached the outer perimeter of the control center. I'll hold them off. Her sister hesitated for a moment, then nodded and ran toward the central control interface. Amelia positioned herself to cover the approach, using her military training to maximum advantage as security forces began converging on their position. The battle for the control center became a desperate fight for survival. Imperial security troops, courtry guards, and automated systems all focused their fire on Amelia's position as Elena worked frantically at the control interface. Around them, the convergence device continued its activation sequence, its energy output approaching the critical threshold that would trigger the galactic genocide. "I'm in," Elena called over the sound of weapons fire. "Beginning phase variance introduction." The device's harmonic resonance began to shift as Elena introduced deliberate instabilities into the quantum field. But the process was slow, requiring precise calculations and careful timing to avoid triggering premature activation. "How long?" Amelia demanded, firing at advancing security forces. 3 minutes, Elena replied. "Maybe 4. 3 minutes was an eternity in combat. Amelia's ammunition was running low, and enemy forces were establishing positions that would allow them to overwhelm her defensive position. But she had to hold them off long enough for Elena to complete the sabotage. An explosion rocked the chamber as one of Commander Park's larger charges detonated. The blast disabled several more automated systems, but it also brought down part of the chamber's ceiling. Rock and debris rained down around them as the ancient structure shuddered under the assault. "Elena, we need to go." "Almost there," her sister called back. "The cascade is beginning." On the central display, Amelia could see the quantum field measurements beginning to fluctuate wildly. The phase variance Elena had introduced was spreading through the network, creating instabilities that threatened to tear apart the entire system. 30 seconds, Elena announced. But as she spoke, Colonel Koss appeared at the edge of the control center, accompanied by a squad of Imperial Marines. His pale features were twisted with rage as he surveyed the damage to the Convergence project. "Step away from the controls, Dr. Vasquez," he ordered, raising his weapon. "Your interference ends now." Elena looked back at Amelia, her hand hovering over the final activation sequence that would complete the sabotage. The cascade was building, but without the final command, the system might be able to stabilize and repair itself. "Do it," Amelia told her sister. Elena slammed her hand down on the activation control just as Koss fired. The energy blast caught her in the chest, sending her sprawling across the control interface. But her final command had been entered, and the cascade failure was now irreversible. Throughout the chamber, the convergence device began to tear itself apart as the quantum field collapsed. Energy discharges erupted from the crystalline structure, and the harmonic resonance that had taken years to achieve dissolved into chaos. "Elena!" Amelia screamed, rushing to her sister's side. Elena's breathing was labored, but she was still conscious. Did it work?" Around them, the chamber was shaking apart as the device's destruction triggered sympathetic failures throughout the facility. Emergency evacuation alarms echoed through the complex as personnel fled the collapsing installation. "It worked," Amelia confirmed, cradling her sister in her arms. "The network is destroyed." Elena smiled weakly. "Then it was worth it." As the chamber collapsed around them, Amelia held her sister and watched the convergence device, humanity's greatest threat, tear itself apart in spectacular fashion. They had won, but the victory had come at a terrible cost. 6 months after the destruction of the convergence device, Amelia stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned ISV Elena Vasquez, watching the reconstruction efforts on Neo-Constantinople. The capital world was slowly recovering from the chaos that had followed the collapse of the Courtry conspiracy, but the scars of the crisis would remain for generations. The immediate aftermath of the convergence device's destruction had been catastrophic for the conspiracy. Without their ultimate weapon, the Courtry-controlled government had lost its primary advantage over the resistance. More importantly, the network of quantum amplifiers across the empire had overloaded simultaneously, creating a cascade of failures that exposed the full scope of the conspiracy to populations across the galaxy. Emperor Vorth had not survived the collapse of his regime. According to intelligence reports, he had been killed by his own supporters when they realized that the Convergence project had failed. The underground Courtry civilization had retreated to their hidden cities, but without their biotechnology advantages, they no longer posed an existential threat to human civilization. "Admiral Vasquez?" came a voice behind her. She turned to see Admiral Reyes approaching, wearing the insignia of the newly appointed fleet commander. The Resistance victory had elevated many former rebels to positions of legitimate authority, as the Empire struggled to rebuild its command structure. "Helena," Amelia replied. "How are the trials proceeding?" "Slowly but surely," Reyes answered. "We've identified over 3,000 individuals who were complicit in the conspiracy, either through direct participation or neuroconditioning. The challenge is determining who acted freely and who was controlled by courtry technology." The legal and ethical questions raised by the conspiracy were unprecedented. Thousands of Imperial personnel had been subjected to neuroconditioning that altered their personalities and loyalties. Determining criminal responsibility under such circumstances required entirely new legal frameworks. "Any word from the archaeological teams on Courtry Prime?" "Dr. Morrison's team has made significant progress mapping the underground cities," Reyes reported. "The technology they've found is remarkable, biotechnology centuries ahead of our current capabilities, but focused entirely on control and manipulation rather than beneficial applications." Amelia nodded. The question of what to do with hegemony technology had become one of the most contentious issues facing the new government. Some wanted to destroy it entirely to prevent future misuse, while others argued that it could be adapted for beneficial purposes such as medical treatment and genetic therapy. "The Senate has reached a decision on the memorial," Reyes added quietly. Amelia looked up, her attention fully focused. The memorial for victims of the conspiracy, including her sister, had been a subject of intense debate for months. "They're going to name it after Elena?" "The Elena Vasquez Memorial for the Preservation of Human Diversity," Reyes confirmed. "It will be built on Courtry Prime, at the site of the primary research facility. The underground cities will be preserved as a historical site and warning to future generations." The idea felt appropriate to Amelia. Elena had dedicated her life to understanding the past in order to protect the future. Having her name associated with a warning against the dangers of genetic authoritarianism seemed like a fitting tribute. "Admiral," came another voice. Lieutenant Commander Okafor approached from the ship's communication center, carrying a data pad with obvious urgency. She had been promoted to serve as Amelia's intelligence coordinator, one of many Resistance veterans who now held positions of responsibility in the reconstructed Imperial government. "We've received a message from the frontier," Okafor reported. "Captain Singh's exploration mission has made contact with a previously unknown human colony in the Vega sector. They've been isolated since the early Imperial expansion period and have developed some remarkable biotechnology of their own." "Beneficial biotechnology?" Amelia asked hopefully. "Very much so," Okafor confirmed. "Medical applications, agricultural improvements, and what appears to be genuine genetic therapy that enhances human capabilities without compromising individual identity or free will." The discovery was significant. One of the major challenges facing the post-conspiracy empire was how to compete with biotechnology advantages without falling into the same authoritarian traps that had characterized the hegemony of Shadows and their courtry descendants. "Schedule a diplomatic mission," Amelia decided. "Full scientific exchange protocols, but be very careful about what technologies we share in return. We can't afford to export the tools of oppression to innocent populations." As Okafor departed to make the necessary arrangements, Admiral Reyes moved to stand beside Amelia at the observation window. "You know," she said quietly, "Elena would be proud of what you've accomplished. Not just stopping the conspiracy, but helping to build something better from the wreckage." Amelia was quiet for a moment, watching construction crews working to repair damage to the capital city's skyline. "I keep thinking about what she said in that laboratory. The Courtry weren't just planning to eliminate certain populations, they wanted to remake humanity entirely, eliminate diversity, free will, individual identity. But they failed," Reyes pointed out. "Because people like you and Elena were willing to fight for something better." "This time," Amelia replied. "But the technology still exists. The knowledge of how to control minds and manipulate genetics. Someday, someone else might try to use it. Then we'll be ready for them," Reyes said firmly. "The memorial won't just be a monument to the victims, it will be a training center for future generations." We'll make sure they understand what we almost lost and what it took to preserve it." A communication alert chimed throughout the ship, indicating an incoming priority message. Okafor's voice came over the intercom. "Admiral Vasquez, you're needed in the command center. We're receiving reports of unusual activity in the Outer Rim territories." Amelia sighed. The galaxy was still full of threats and challenges, and the work of preserving freedom and diversity would never be complete. But that was the price of vigilance, the eternal struggle to protect what mattered most. "Duty calls," she said to Admiral Reyes. "It always does," Reyes replied with a slight smile. "But at least now we're fighting to preserve something worth preserving." As Amelia made her way to the command center, she reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this point. She had started as a frontier naval officer concerned with border security and trade protection. Now she found herself as one of the guardians of human civilization itself, responsible for ensuring that the lessons learned from the Courtry conspiracy would never be forgotten. The price of freedom, she had learned, was not just eternal vigilance. It was the willingness to sacrifice everything to prevent those who would remake humanity in their own image. Elena had paid that price, and countless others had as well. But they had succeeded in preserving something precious: the right of every human being to be different, to think independently, to choose their own path through life. In a galaxy full of wonders and dangers, that might be the most valuable treasure of all. 10 years after the Convergence crisis, Admiral Amelia Vasquez stood in the Elena Vasquez Memorial Hall on Courtry Prime, addressing a gathering of young naval officers who had never known the galaxy under the shadow of the conspiracy. The memorial had grown beyond its original conception, becoming not just a monument to the victims, but a comprehensive educational center dedicated to preventing future attempts at genetic authoritarianism. "The hegemony of shadows fell 3,000 years ago," she told the assembled officers. "But their ideology survived in hiding, waiting for an opportunity to resurface. The Courtry conspiracy was that opportunity, and it nearly succeeded." The preserved underground cities had become a powerful teaching tool. Visitors could walk through the chambers where biotechnology had been developed specifically for the purpose of controlling and manipulating human beings. They could see the laboratories where diversity had been classified as a disease to be cured. "The technology itself was not evil," Amelia continued. "Biotechnology has enormous potential for good: medical treatment, genetic therapy, enhancement of human capabilities. The evil lay in the intention to use that technology to eliminate choice, to make all humans conform to a single template of what the Courtry considered perfection." One of the young officers raised her hand. "Admiral, how do we prevent something like this from happening again?" It was the question Amelia had been asked hundreds of times over the past decade, and her answer had evolved as she gained perspective on the crisis. "Vigilance," she replied. "But not just military vigilance. Intellectual vigilance, the willingness to question authority and challenge orthodoxy. Moral vigilance, the courage to stand up for principles even when it's dangerous. And most importantly, diversity vigilance, the recognition that human differences are not weaknesses to be corrected, but strengths to be celebrated." After the presentation, Amelia walked alone through the memorial's exhibits. The preserved convergence device served as a centerpiece, a reminder of how close humanity had come to losing its soul. But surrounding it were displays showing the diversity of human civilization, art from 1,000 worlds, scientific achievements by people of every background, examples of the creativity and innovation that emerged from differences rather than conformity. Her personal communicator chimed with an incoming message from Fleet Command. The exploration ship Diversity had made contact with another isolated human colony, this one in the Galactic core region. Early reports suggested they had developed sustainable biotechnology that enhanced human capabilities while preserving individual identity. Amelia smiled. The galaxy was still full of surprises, still full of humans who had found different ways to thrive among the stars. The Courtry had been wrong about human potential. Diversity was not a weakness but humanity's greatest strength. As she prepared to leave the memorial, Amelia paused at a small exhibit dedicated to her sister. Elena's archaeological notes were displayed alongside images from the underground cities, showing how careful study of the past had provided the knowledge needed to prevent its repetition. "We kept the promise," Amelia said quietly to her sister's memory. "Humanity remains human, diverse, chaotic, wonderful, and free." Outside, the twin suns of the Cortry system were setting, casting long shadows across the memorial grounds. Somewhere among the stars, new threats might be forming, new challenges emerging that would test humanity's commitment to freedom and diversity. But the Watchers were ready. The memorial would continue its educational mission, the fleet would maintain its vigilance, and the lessons of the convergence crisis would be passed down to future generations. The long watch would continue, ensuring that the choice to be human, in all its messy, complicated, diverse glory, would never again face extinction. In the gathering darkness, Admiral Amelia Vasquez looked up at the stars and felt a profound sense of satisfaction. The empire her sister had died to save was not perfect, but it was still recognizably human. And in a galaxy full of dangers and wonders, that might be the greatest victory of all. The Cortry conspiracy had failed because they had misunderstood the most fundamental truth about humanity. Strength came not from uniformity, but from the endless creativity that emerged when different people were free to pursue different dreams. That freedom, won at such a terrible cost, would be protected for as long as humans traveled among the stars.